In addition to sort of feedback being about life, we also, in organizations, use it to mean 3 very different things. And so the thing we need to set up front is that there are really 3 kinds of feedback. The first is appreciation. Appreciation says, I see you, I get you, you matter. This is evident in children. Mom, look at this, look at this, look at this. We don't ever really outgrow that. We just get more subtle about asking. And sometimes when people say, I wish I got more feedback at work, what they really mean is, I wish someone noticed that I work here. I'm not sure anyone actually notices how hard I'm working or the value that I am creating. In the United States, the US Department of Labor did a survey and found that 93% of American workers feel underappreciated at work. And of people who left their jobs, so they quit and went elsewhere rather than being fired, so they are lost talent, almost half cited being underappreciated as the primary reason that they left. When I go into a team that's having trouble working together, a very common diagnosis that I will find is what we call mutual appreciation deficit disorder, which is that everyone on that team feels underappreciated for how hard they're working and the value they're bringing, but especially how much crap they're putting up with from all these other guys, right? So appreciation is part of what keeps us engaged in employee engagement surveys and motivated and addresses morale. There are 2 more kinds, of course. The second is coaching. This is the most obvious. Coaching is aimed to help you get better at something, to avoid an obstacle, to learn and grow. But the third is evaluation. Evaluation assesses you. It rates or ranks you. It says, here's where you stand, and thus here's what you can expect. You did or did not get the promotion, this is your rating, etc. Now, evaluation is about getting judged. And as you can imagine, it is emotionally the loudest of the 3. And what often happens is people wait until the performance review, which is evaluation, and they store up all the coaching from the year to give it during the performance evaluation, which means that often the person receiving the rating, what do they remember from the conversation? The rating and how they felt about it. If you look at the neuroscience research, actually, if someone has a strong emotional reaction to something, so either they're disappointed or upset about their rating, or they're thrilled about their rating. They won't remember the details or the facts, they will remember how they felt treated. So whether the rating is good or bad, they don't remember the actual coaching, right? Either I'm sitting being upset about the rating, so I don't hear the coaching, or I got a great rating, so apparently I don't need the coaching and don't have to listen to it, right? Now, part of the problem we have is that although we need all 3 kinds, people do need to know periodically where they stand to know what to expect and if they're doing okay. Because we mix these and work at cross purposes with each other, we often drown out coaching, and appreciation often gets dropped out altogether. Come out as evaluation when people feel frustrated. So what I mean to say is, here's a way that you could do it better, but what I instead say, well, that was not great, right? Which is evaluation, not coaching. Focuses on rating it or judging it. And certainly if there's a lot of anger and aggression, you just need to protect yourself in that situation, feeling attacked. Yeah, I think that this is one of the reasons we have so ambivalent, split, a feeling about feedback. On the one hand, if there's value there, we do want to learn and grow. But often the way it's delivered or who delivers it or what is said isn't valid and is painful. And yet, sometimes it's our most painful experiences that end up teaching us the most. So I'm curious how many people here would say, actually, as I look backwards, some of my most painful experiences are places where I learned the most. Anyone? Yeah, so what's up with that? I think that's a reflection of those 2 core human needs and why we say we want feedback, and sometimes it's exhilarating and fun and interesting to have a good coach or mentor, and other times it's so painful you just have to escape. So a lot of the skills that we're looking at here are how do you manage or reduce the pain, and get to the learning faster and find the value in the feedback even when it's poorly delivered. In looking at people's different reactions to feedback, sensitivity to feedback, one of the things that we found is that individual sensitivity to feedback can vary by up to 3,000%. Now, what does this mean for people in organizations giving each other feedback? You have some people who are relatively insensitive or even keel about feedback. They may tend to give by being quite direct because it's not that big a deal. But the person that they're giving it to is very sensitive to feedback and has a big reaction. Well, then I'm going to tell you, if you are overreacting to my direct feedback, that you just need to not take it personally. So I'll give you feedback about how you take feedback, which in fact may just be the way that person is wired. Here's the problem with feedback. It comes delivered in these very vague labels, and we often decide whether we will take the feedback or not before we have a conversation about what it is the giver means by the feedback. Now, in order to understand what the giver means, our suggestion is to ask questions in two directions. Because feedback, all feedback actually has a past and it has a future. So you can either ask questions looking back. There's something that the giver observed or expected or assumed or thought you would do that you didn't do that is leading them to give you this feedback. So asking questions about where the feedback comes from. Help me understand what you noticed or why you're saying this. Or you can ask questions forward-looking. If I were going to take your advice, what is it that you think I should do about it? Be more concrete about what it is you think being more proactive would look like. You say I should speak up more in meetings. Okay, speak up about what? Were there particular opportunities that I missed or input you wanted me to add, etc.? Is it that I need to sound more confident? I need to have higher quality or more quantity? Help me understand going forward, if I took your feedback, what it would mean. If you can have better conversations to first understand the feedback that's coming your way, you can then make a better decision about whether to take it or not, or whether you want to experiment with it. Because often we have an all or nothing attitude. There was a faculty member recently who was told by some students that he used too many stories and went down too many tangents, and he had to stop doing that. And he said to me, well, the problem is I get feedback from other students that the stories are what really help them understand the material. So obviously this feedback is wrong. And I said, well, I don't know if it's right or wrong. Different people have different learning styles. Maybe you could experiment with using half as many stories. It may be that you're using too many, or that they're too long, or that the learning point occasionally gets lost, or they need more structure. But I don't think it's either right or wrong. Drop all your stories, or keep all your stories. There's something going wrong, and going back to have conversation with the students would help you understand it better. Who is giving you the feedback, and how you feel treated by them, and what you think about them, whether you respect them, trust them, think they have experience or credibility, and particularly whether you feel appreciated by them, are key components to being willing to listen to feedback from them. And so often our reaction to who and that relationship overshadows the what. In addition to that, we use the people that we trust to bounce the feedback off of, or to vent about the feedback, and particularly in organizations, right, we triangulate. You got the feedback indirectly, right, through the grapevine, we would say. But the problem is that we're not clear what we want from other people, and we waste an opportunity to learn. Feedback is very threatening. It's a silver medal. You find out you're not gold. But if you can shift, and we have some practices to do that, to a growth identity, which says, I am how I am now, but I actually need to know how I am doing and where I stand in order to know what to work on next. Feedback actually becomes much less threatening, throws people for less of a loop, and people are actually much more accurate self-assessors. Those with a growth identity, actually, when they do self-assessment, it's much more accurate than people with a fixed identity, which tend to inflate their self-evaluation because they're, in many ways, hiding from feedback. one of the questions that people often ask to try to get feedback. Natural question, hey, do you have any feedback for me? That is a terrible question. Please never again ask anyone that question. It's too big a question. It's not clear, do you want a supportive mirror or do you actually want an honest mirror? And by the way, about what? Your personality or your performance or your pants? I don't even know what you want me to give you feedback on. I feel like I should have prepared for the conversation. Instead, what we recommend is to ask for one thing. What is one thing you see me doing, or maybe failing to do, where I'm getting in my own way? What's one thing I could do to make these meetings more effective? By the way, you're not asking, is there anything? You are assuming there is something. And in doing so, you are much more likely to get something concrete, and you're being clear that you want an honest mirror. I know there's at least one thing, so just tell me one of them. Finally, if the feedback feels wrong, I ask myself two questions. Number one, what's wrong with this feedback? And I let myself list all of my reactions to it. It's poorly delivered, it's their problem, they don't know what they're talking about, etc. Then I make myself ask one more question, which is there anything that might be right? And if I sit with that question, often I can come up with one thing that I will continue to think about. And then finally, the temptation, I think, with this material is to think, great, I'll go back to my organization, I'll teach everybody how to receive feedback, and that'll solve the problem, because then I'll give them feedback and they'll just take it. It's not going to work. Because the most important people to actually become better receivers are the people in positions of leadership. If you are a team leader, even at the lowest level of teams, if that team leader gets better at receiving, and they let other people see them learn, it will change the culture of that team.